She walked into the classroom quietly, as she always did. Her backpack felt heavier than usual, filled with books and papers. But it wasn't just the weight of the bag. It was the weight of being overlooked, of being invisible in a place that should have felt like home. She took her usual seat at the back of the room, trying to make herself small and unnoticed. The chatter of her classmates filled the space, loud and confident, while she sat quietly, fingers fidgeting with the strap of her bag. Teachers often glanced her way, but never really saw her. They saw a quiet student, one who rarely raised her hand, one who didn't speak up in group activities or competitions. To them, she was just average, nothing to worry about, nothing to challenge. They didn't notice the way her eyes lit up when she read something intriguing, or how she lingered over problems that others gave up on quickly. They didn't know about the small inventions she made at home, or the poems she wrote in secret notebooks. She had learned early that being invisible was safer. When teachers underestimated her, she avoided the disappointment of trying and failing under their watchful eyes. At home, she could let her mind wander freely. She could build intricate structures from old boxes, compose little songs on a keyboard, or write stories about imaginary worlds where she was the hero. Her parents saw it, encouraged it, but the world outside her small home rarely did. School was different. The teachers' expectations were like walls that she couldn't climb. They assumed that because she didn't participate in the usual ways, she lacked talent or interest. In math, she quietly solved problems that stumped her classmates, but no one asked her to explain. In literature, she wrote essays that were creative and thoughtful, but they were rarely read aloud. It was as if her ideas floated in the air and disappeared before anyone could catch them. She watched the other students with a mix of curiosity and envy. They spoke freely, laughed loudly, and received praise for their confidence. She wanted that recognition, but she also feared it. What if she tried and failed? What if her work wasn't good enough after all? So she remained quiet, studying from the shadows, learning from the mistakes of others, observing everything, and recording it all in her mind. During lunch, she sat with a small group of friends who were just like her, in a way. They didn't make a big fuss, they didn't draw attention to themselves, but they had their own little world of shared jokes, quiet understanding, and creative ideas. They exchanged stories, sketches, and small inventions they had made at home. They were a tiny sanctuary, a place where being different was normal and being unnoticed was comfortable. In class, she often had to fight against the subtle ways teachers dismissed her. When a question was asked, her hand would shoot up, but a teacher might call on someone else, thinking they needed to give the more outspoken students a chance. Sometimes she would speak up anyway, softly, and the teacher would nod absent-mindedly before moving on. She learned to speak just enough to get through the day without drawing too much attention. It was exhausting, but it was survival. Her notebooks were filled with sketches and notes that no one would ever see. She drew ideas for machines that could solve simple problems, wrote poems about dreams she never shared, and scribbled little plans for stories that existed only in her imagination. These private worlds were where she felt alive. They were where her genius quietly flourished, waiting for the right moment to be seen. At home, her parents tried to encourage her to share her talents. They didn't pressure her, but they believed in her in a way that teachers and classmates never did. They would ask to see what she was working on, marvel at her small creations, and listen to her ideas with genuine interest. It was the one place where her abilities were recognized and celebrated. Still, she kept some things to herself, fearing that the wider world wouldn't understand. One day, during a routine science class, a teacher announced a small competition for students to present an experiment or project of their own. Most students groaned, complaining about the extra work, while others whispered ideas excitedly. She felt a spark of interest, but quickly tucked it away. She didn't want to set herself up for disappointment. Still, a tiny voice in her head nudged her to consider it, to think about what she could do if no one expected anything from her. Her friends noticed the thoughtful look on her face and nudged her. "You should enter," one whispered. She smiled faintly, not because she was confident, but because she knew she had ideas that could surprise everyone if she dared. Yet, the thought of failing publicly, of being laughed at or dismissed, made her hesitate. She was caught in the middle of two worlds. The world of her imagination, where she was capable of anything, and the world of school, where she was invisible. Days passed, and the idea grew quietly in her mind. She began to sketch out a plan, small at first, experimenting with ideas in her notebooks. She imagined the looks on teachers' faces if she succeeded, the moment they would realize they had underestimated her. It was a thrilling thought, one that made her heart race. She knew she had something special, something that had never been noticed before, and it frightened and excited her at the same time. At night, she worked quietly in her room, using whatever materials she could find. She tested ideas, made mistakes, and started over. She measured, calculated, and adjusted. Her parents peeked in occasionally, offering encouragement and simple suggestions, but mostly, they let her explore. It was the first time she felt like her genius was being nurtured, even if no one else knew it existed. Back at school, the usual patterns continued. Teachers passed over her during discussions, classmates joked and played, and she quietly observed. But inside her mind, a quiet revolution was taking place. She was preparing, not just for the competition, but for a moment when her hidden abilities could no longer be ignored. She had been underestimated for so long that she had learned patience, resilience, and determination. She had learned that sometimes the most powerful things grow in silence. One afternoon, as she walked home with her small group of friends, they talked about dreams and possibilities. They shared little victories, ideas, and frustrations. She listened, contributed when she felt like it, but mostly, she carried her own secret project in her mind, a project that could change everything. It was her small rebellion against a world that had ignored her for too long. The days became weeks, and the competition drew closer. She kept her project a secret, only showing snippets to her parents. She didn't tell anyone at school, fearing the ridicule or disbelief that might come. But each evening, she worked with more confidence. She could feel the ideas coming together, and for the first time, she imagined herself standing in front of everyone, revealing her true self. Despite the quiet struggles, despite the teacher's low expectations and the classmates' chatter, she found a quiet strength in herself. She realized that being underestimated didn't make her less capable. It made her stronger, more determined to prove herself when the time was right. She had learned patience, observation, and the value of quiet perseverance. And now, with the competition approaching, she felt the first stirrings of hope and excitement. Every moment, every sketch, every experiment brought her closer to the moment when she would step into the light. It was still far away, and doubts lingered, but she had discovered something important. Her talent and her genius did not need immediate recognition to exist. They were real and they were hers. And one day, she would show the world what they had all missed. She walked through the hallways every day, observing the world around her with careful attention. The chatter of her classmates, the noise of lockers slamming, the smell of cafeteria food. All of it formed a background to her life, a rhythm she was used to. She often wondered why it seemed easier for everyone else. Teachers praised some students constantly, rewarding confidence and loud participation, while she remained in the shadows, her talent hidden from view. She had grown accustomed to being underestimated, but it didn't mean it didn't sting sometimes. In math class, she quietly solved problems that left others confused. She could see patterns where others saw chaos and understand solutions before they were explained. But when she raised her hand to answer a question, the teacher often looked past her, calling on another student instead. She learned not to take it personally, though it was difficult. She had to find motivation within herself, knowing that her abilities were real even if others didn't acknowledge them. Sometimes, she would smile to herself when she knew the answer and no one else did. It was a small victory she could keep in her heart. Her friends noticed the same thing. They were a quiet circle, each with their own talents and struggles, each feeling the same invisibility that she often felt. They shared ideas, dreams, and creative projects, giving each other encouragement. They understood the frustration of being overlooked and had developed a kind of quiet resilience. They talked about entering competitions, writing stories, building small inventions, but the world outside rarely seemed ready to notice. The encouragement within their small circle was enough to keep their spirits alive. At home, her parents tried to nurture her gifts. They didn't force her to show them to the world, but they always encouraged curiosity and creativity. They asked her questions, listened to her explanations, and celebrated her ideas. In that safe space, she could explore without fear of judgment. Sometimes she wondered why school couldn't be more like home, why teachers couldn't see beyond the quiet exterior to the world of ideas inside her mind. But she learned to accept that people see only what they expect to see. During science class, a teacher announced another small project opportunity. Students whispered among themselves, some groaning, others excited. She felt a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The idea of entering her own project stirred a mix of fear and excitement. She knew she had ideas that could impress, but the thought of being publicly underestimated and possibly laughed at held her back. Still, the tiny spark of possibility wouldn't go away. It lingered in her mind, persistent, asking her to consider the challenge. Every day, she observed the students who were celebrated. They spoke confidently, raised their hands, and were rewarded with attention and praise. Some genuinely deserved it, she acknowledged, but many were praised for being loud rather than accurate or creative. It was confusing, frustrating, and sometimes discouraging. She often thought about how unfair it was that quiet talent could be ignored while others shone through confidence alone. Yet, she didn't let it consume her. She focused on her own growth, quietly nurturing her skills and knowledge. One afternoon, she stayed after class to work on a small experiment of her own creation. Using leftover materials, she tested ideas she had been thinking about for weeks. Her hands moved carefully, measuring, adjusting, noting results. A few classmates passed by, giving her curious looks, but no one interfered. She liked it that way. She could focus without distraction, fully immersed in the process of creation. Each small discovery felt like a secret triumph, one that strengthened her confidence bit by bit. She often felt lonely in school. Even with friends, the majority of classmates remained distant, wrapped up in their own social circles and achievements. Sometimes it hurt to feel invisible, to know that teachers underestimated her because she didn't fit their expectations. But she also learned to use that loneliness as fuel. If the world wouldn't notice her, she would notice herself. If they refused to believe in her, she would believe in herself. That belief became a quiet strength, one that no teacher's oversight could diminish. Her notebooks became increasingly important, filled with sketches, ideas, observations, and notes from classes. They were a personal world where her genius flourished. She recorded experiments, wrote detailed observations, and brainstormed improvements. Some of the notes were purely imaginative, things she hoped might work someday. Others were practical, clever solutions to problems she noticed around her. The notebooks became her sanctuary, a tangible proof of her abilities, even if the rest of the world remained unaware. At home, her parents noticed how engrossed she was in her work. They asked about her projects, offered suggestions, and occasionally joined her in small experiments. She cherished those moments, feeling the warmth of recognition and support. Sometimes she shared little victories, small successes that made her proud, and her parents celebrated them with genuine excitement. It was in these moments that she realized her value was not dependent on school or teachers, but on her dedication and creativity. As the days went by, the upcoming project in school loomed larger in her mind. She wrestled with the fear of failure and the desire to be seen. Could she reveal her abilities and risk the disappointment if it went wrong? Or was it safer to remain hidden, keeping her talent private and protected? It was a constant struggle, a balancing act between courage and caution. But each time she imagined succeeding, even quietly, it fueled her determination to try. She began to experiment more deliberately, testing ideas that were bolder, more complex than anything she had done before. Every failure was a lesson, every small success a confirmation that she was capable. The process became almost addictive. She felt alive in a way that nothing else could match. She knew that her genius existed, quietly waiting to be acknowledged, and the possibility of revealing it to the world grew stronger each day. Her friends noticed the change. She was more focused, more determined, yet still humble and quiet. They teased her gently, asking when she would finally show everyone what she could do. She smiled, not ready to reveal it just yet, but the encouragement mattered. It reminded her that she wasn't alone in her journey, that there were people who believed in her before the world did. Teachers continued to underestimate her, unaware of the storm of ideas brewing in her mind. They assumed she was doing what she always did, quietly completing work, never causing trouble. Little did they know, she was preparing for something that could change everything. Every observation, every experiment, every note in her notebook was a step toward the moment when she would no longer be invisible. One rainy afternoon, she stayed late in the classroom, the sound of rain tapping against the windows. She worked on a small mechanical project, adjusting, testing, and noting results. Each detail mattered, each step was crucial. She thought about how the other students would react if they saw her work, how the teachers would react if they realized they had been wrong about her. The thought made her heart race with a mix of fear and excitement. She was ready to prove herself, but only when the time was right. At home, dinner conversation flowed around her, but she was lost in thought, reviewing her project in her mind. Her parents asked questions, encouraged her, and reminded her that it wasn't about recognition, but about learning and enjoying the process. That advice grounded her, giving her the confidence to continue. She realized that while acknowledgement from others was nice, her own belief in her talent mattered far more. As the project day approached, the tension in her mind grew. She rehearsed quietly, refined her ideas, and double-checked every detail. The fear of being underestimated lingered, but it was now accompanied by a quiet confidence that she had never felt before. She had prepared, practiced, and created something truly her own. The time had come for her to step out of the shadows, not for anyone else, but for herself. She knew that when the day arrived, the world might not be ready for what she had to show. Teachers might still doubt her, classmates might not understand, but she would stand tall and present her work with quiet pride. She had learned that the opinions of others could never define her abilities. She was ready to reveal her hidden genius, the brilliance that had been quietly growing for years, unseen but undeniable. The day of the school project approached, and excitement and tension filled the air. Students whispered in hallways, shared their plans, and practiced presentations. She moved quietly through it all, carrying her project carefully, her mind focused and calm despite the buzz around her. She had worked in secret, rehearsing and refining her ideas late at night, and now it was time to see if it would all come together. The thought of revealing her work made her heart race, a mix of nerves and anticipation. She wondered how teachers and classmates would react, but she reminded herself that what mattered most was that she believed in her own abilities. In class, some students boasted about their projects, their voices loud and confident. They assumed they would impress everyone, not realizing that confidence alone does not always equal skill. She quietly observed, noting their techniques, imagining how her own presentation would stand out. She didn't want to compete for attention. She wanted to show what she had created, something unique, something that reflected her quiet genius. Her friends gathered around her, offering smiles and gentle encouragement. They had seen the effort she had put in, the nights spent working on her project, and they knew how much it meant to her. "You'll amaze everyone," one of them whispered. She smiled faintly, a mix of gratitude and nerves. It was comforting to have someone in her corner, someone who truly understood the dedication behind the work. When it was time for the presentations, students moved to the front of the room one by one. Some stumbled over their words, some struggled with technical difficulties, and some delivered their projects with ease. The teachers nodded politely, often praising the more confident students while barely noticing the effort behind quieter contributions. She waited patiently, listening, watching, and feeling her own determination grow. She knew that when her turn came, it would be different. Finally, her moment arrived. She carried her project to the front of the classroom, setting it carefully on the table. She took a deep breath, letting the anticipation settle into focus. The room went quiet, the chatter fading as everyone realized it was her turn. She began to explain her project with clear, confident words, demonstrating the mechanics, the purpose, and the creativity behind it. She moved with calm assurance, showing how much thought and effort had gone into every detail. As she spoke, the faces of the teachers shifted from polite disinterest to surprise. They leaned forward, eyes widening, realizing that the quiet student they had underestimated had created something remarkable. Her classmates murmured among themselves, impressed by the originality and intelligence of her work. Some who had doubted her even began to nod, acknowledging that they had misjudged her abilities. She felt a surge of pride, not from the approval, but from the knowledge that she had proved to herself what she was capable of. The demonstration continued flawlessly. She answered questions with thoughtful responses, explaining her reasoning and the steps she had taken to test and refine her project. The room was captivated, hanging on every word, every action, every detail. It was a moment of quiet triumph, a culmination of years of unnoticed effort, perseverance, and hidden talent. The teacher's previous assumptions faded in the face of undeniable skill and ingenuity. Her friends cheered quietly from their seats, proud and excited for her success. They had known about her talent all along and were thrilled to see the rest of the world finally recognize it. She returned to her seat with a mixture of relief and exhilaration, feeling lighter than she had in years. The experience was validating, not because she had finally earned recognition, but because it confirmed the truth she had always known. Her abilities were real and valuable. After the presentations, the teachers gathered to discuss the results. They spoke in hushed tones, expressing surprise and admiration for the work she had done. Some admitted that they had underestimated her, acknowledging their bias and the mistakes they had made in judging her abilities. It was a rare moment of reflection and humility from those who had often overlooked her, and it was deeply satisfying for her to witness. She felt a sense of quiet justice, knowing that her hard work had been seen and appreciated, even if only now. Her classmates approached her, some with genuine curiosity, others with newfound respect. They asked questions, complimented her creativity, and expressed admiration for her dedication. It was a moment of connection, bridging the gap that had existed for years between her quiet world and the larger classroom. She realized that talent does not always need to be loud to be noticed. Sometimes, it simply needs the right opportunity to shine. At tea home that evening, she shared the story of her day with her parents. Their eyes lit up with pride as they listened, celebrating her accomplishment and the recognition she had finally received. She spoke with enthusiasm and joy, recounting the reactions, the questions, and the moment when the teachers realized they had been wrong. It was a moment of triumph, not just for the acknowledgement, but for the journey that had brought her here, the countless hours of work, the patience, and the resilience. Even as the excitement settled, she reflected on what had truly mattered. It wasn't the applause or the recognition, but the confirmation of her own abilities. She had trusted herself, nurtured her talent, and persevered despite being underestimated. That self-belief, built over years of quiet effort, had carried her through. She realized that the recognition from others was meaningful, yes, but it was secondary to the understanding of her own worth and potential. In the days that followed, her project became a topic of conversation at school. Teachers and students alike spoke about her creativity and skill, acknowledging that they had been mistaken in underestimating her. The experience opened doors for her, with teachers suggesting new opportunities, projects, and challenges that had previously been overlooked. She approached these opportunities with careful consideration, knowing that each one was a chance to grow and continue developing her talents. Her friends remained a constant support, celebrating each new step and providing encouragement when doubts surfaced. They reminded her that the journey was ongoing, that one successful moment did not define her entirely, but it could serve as a foundation for future growth. She appreciated their presence, understanding that shared support made challenges easier to face and victories sweeter to celebrate. She continued to work on new ideas, inspired by the success of her project. Her confidence grew, but so did her humility and dedication. She knew that talent alone was not enough. Persistence, preparation, and thoughtful execution were just as important. The project had revealed her hidden genius, but it had also taught her the value of careful effort, self-belief, and the courage to step forward when the moment demanded it. The experience left a lasting impact on her perception of school, teachers, and her own abilities. She understood now that being underestimated was not a reflection of her worth but of others' limitations in seeing potential. She had proven to herself that quiet diligence and hidden talent could achieve remarkable outcomes. The memory of the day, the surprise and admiration of her peers, and the acknowledgement from teachers would remain a reminder that she was capable of more than anyone had imagined. She continued to balance schoolwork, personal projects, and quiet reflection, building upon the foundation laid by this experience. Each day brought new challenges, but she faced them with a renewed sense of confidence and curiosity. She knew that her journey was far from over, but the revelation of her hidden genius had opened a path forward, one that she could navigate with determination, skill, and an understanding of her own value. Her story became an inspiration to her friends and classmates, a subtle but powerful lesson in the importance of recognizing talent, perseverance, and creativity. She showed that brilliance is not always loud, that dedication can be hidden behind quiet behavior, and that true genius can flourish even when underestimated. Her journey was a testament to the power of patience, hard work, and the courage to step into the light when the time was right. The day of the final performance arrived, a day she had imagined countless times in her mind. The school auditorium buzzed with excitement, students moving to their seats, teachers preparing notes, and parents gathering to watch. She stood backstage, her project ready, her mind steady but alert. Every moment of preparation, every secret experiment, every night spent working alone had led to this day. She could feel her heart racing, a mix of anticipation and quiet determination. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that she had done the work, learned the lessons, and now it was time to show her true self. The first few performers took the stage, and applause filled the room. Some performances were strong, some had small mistakes, but each student tried in their own way. She observed silently, learning from each presentation, adjusting her mindset, and building her confidence. When the time finally came for her turn, a hush settled over the audience. All eyes turned to her, and for a moment, she felt the weight of being underestimated all those years. But she also felt the power of all her preparation, of all the hidden effort she had poured into this moment. She stepped forward confidently, placing her project carefully in the center of the stage. She looked out at the audience, at the teachers and students who had never truly seen her potential. Then she began. Her voice was calm, clear, and steady, explaining the concept of her project, the thought process behind it, and the steps she had taken to develop it. Every movement was deliberate, every word precise. She demonstrated the mechanisms, the logic, and the creativity involved, showing her genius in a way that could not be ignored. At first, there was quiet disbelief. Teachers shifted in their seats, eyebrows raised, eyes widening. Students leaned forward, murmuring in astonishment. The project she had created was beyond what anyone had expected from someone they assumed was just an average student. It was innovative, clever, and perfectly executed. Every step she explained, every detail she demonstrated, captured the attention of everyone in the room. Her quiet genius was no longer hidden. It shone brightly under the stage lights. As she continued, questions came from the teachers and students alike. She answered each one with confidence, explaining her reasoning, the tests she had conducted, and the challenges she had faced. She spoke not to impress, but to communicate the depth of her understanding and the originality of her ideas. With every answer, the astonishment in the room grew. Teachers exchanged glances, realizing they had been wrong to underestimate her. Students whispered, expressing amazement and newfound respect. Her performance was not just a demonstration. It was a revelation. Her friends in the audience cheered quietly, proud and exhilarated. They had known about her talent all along and were thrilled to see her brilliance recognized by everyone else. She felt a surge of emotion, not just pride, but a sense of justice and fulfillment. Years of being overlooked, ignored, and underestimated had led to this moment. She had proven, without arrogance, that her abilities were real and powerful. It was a victory that belonged entirely to her, built from perseverance, dedication, and unwavering self-belief. The performance reached its climax as she completed the final demonstration of her project. The audience was silent for a moment, absorbing the ingenuity and precision of her work. Then, slowly, applause began, growing louder and more enthusiastic. Teachers clapped with genuine admiration, acknowledging the brilliance they had previously overlooked. Students rose to their feet, cheering and celebrating the remarkable performance. The sound was overwhelming, but in a way that filled her with joy rather than anxiety. It was a recognition of her talent, yes, but also a recognition of the years of quiet effort that had brought her to this point. She returned to her seat, feeling lighter than she had in years. The tension, the fear, and the doubt that had accompanied her for so long seemed to melt away. She glanced at her friends, who were beaming with pride, and at her parents in the audience, whose eyes were filled with joy. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for their support, knowing that without it, the courage to reveal her hidden genius might have been harder to find. The moment was transformative, a turning point that would remain with her forever. After the performance, teachers spoke to her individually, expressing admiration and regret for having underestimated her. Some admitted openly that they had been wrong, acknowledging their bias and oversight. Others offered new opportunities, projects, and guidance, recognizing that she had the potential to achieve even greater things. The acknowledgement was meaningful, but she felt that the true reward had been the validation of her own abilities, the confirmation that her hard work and dedication had finally been seen. Classmates approached her with curiosity and admiration, asking questions about her process, her ideas, and her methods. Some were inspired, realizing that quiet, unnoticed students could possess extraordinary talent. Others were reflective, considering their own assumptions and biases. The performance had created a ripple effect, changing perceptions and inspiring respect for dedication and creativity. She listened, answered questions, and shared insights, enjoying the moment of connection that had been rare in her school life. At home that evening, she recounted the events of the day to her parents, describing the reactions of teachers and classmates, the applause, and the moments of surprise and admiration. Her parents listened with pride, celebrating not just the recognition she had received, but the growth and courage that had led to it. They reminded her that her talent and determination had always been her own, and the acknowledgement from others was a reflection of her consistent effort and brilliance. In the following days, her performance became a story within the school, shared among students and teachers. It sparked conversations about talent, perseverance, and the importance of seeing beyond first impressions. Teachers became more attentive to the quiet students, encouraging participation and nurturing hidden abilities. She continued her projects, now with confidence and the knowledge that her efforts could be recognized and appreciated. Her experience became a catalyst for change, not just in her own life, but in the culture of the school. She reflected on the journey that had led to this moment. Years of being underestimated, overlooked, and ignored had shaped her, but they had also strengthened her resilience and determination. She had learned patience, perseverance, and the value of self-belief. The recognition she received was gratifying, but the deeper lesson was that talent and dedication are not always immediately visible. They can flourish quietly, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Her friends remained a source of support, celebrating each new idea and project she undertook. They encouraged her to continue exploring, experimenting, and sharing her talents. Their quiet companionship, understanding, and belief in her abilities were invaluable. She realized that while recognition from teachers and classmates was meaningful, the support of those who truly understood her journey was equally important. The performance also transformed her perception of herself. She had always known her capabilities, but the act of revealing her talent and receiving acknowledgement reinforced her confidence. She understood that she did not need constant validation from others to pursue her passions, but that recognition could amplify her sense of accomplishment and open new opportunities. She felt empowered to continue exploring her interests, pushing boundaries, and embracing challenges. In the months that followed, she continued to work on new projects, each one building upon the lessons learned from her performance. She faced challenges with determination, approached problems creatively, and shared her insights generously. Her teachers continued to encourage her, and her classmates respected her abilities, creating an environment where her talent could continue to grow. The moment of revelation had not only changed how others saw her, but also how she saw herself and her potential. Through it all, she carried the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had persevered, nurtured her abilities, and stepped into the light when the time was right. The experience became a defining moment, shaping her future decisions, her approach to challenges, and her understanding of her own value. She had proven that being underestimated did not define her. It merely set the stage for a performance that would reveal her hidden genius to the world. And in that revelation, she discovered not only recognition but also the power and confidence that would guide her for years to come. After the performance, life at school slowly began to change for her. The recognition she had received didn't just fade away after the applause ended. It left a lasting impression. Teachers began to pay attention in ways they hadn't before, noticing her quiet participation, her thoughtful insights, and her careful work. They started calling on her more in class, asking for her ideas, and encouraging her to take on projects they might have previously assigned to louder or more confident students. It was a shift that felt both strange and satisfying, a validation that had been long overdue. Her classmates, too, began to see her differently. The whispers of admiration spread, and she noticed a newfound respect in the way they interacted with her. Some sought her advice on their own projects, intrigued by her approach and the depth of her thinking. Others simply acknowledged her in passing with a smile or nod, small gestures that reflected a change in perception. She didn't let it make her arrogant. Instead, she felt quietly proud, knowing that her talent had finally been seen, not just by teachers but by the peers who shared her everyday school life. At home, she shared each day's experiences with her parents, recounting the conversations, the questions from classmates, and the small but meaningful gestures of recognition from teachers. They listened with pride and joy, celebrating not only the acknowledgement she received, but also her consistent growth, determination, and courage. She realized that the support she had at home had always been the foundation of her confidence. The recognition from the outside world was welcome, but it was the belief of those who truly understood her that mattered most. As the school weeks passed, new opportunities began to appear. Teachers invited her to participate in advanced projects, science fairs, and creative challenges. They offered guidance and mentorship, recognizing the potential she had long demonstrated. She approached these opportunities thoughtfully, choosing carefully where to invest her time and energy, ensuring that each project reflected her dedication and creativity. She was no longer the student who waited quietly in the background. She had stepped into a position where her ideas and efforts could flourish openly. Her friends remained a steady presence, providing encouragement and support. They celebrated her successes without envy, understanding the years of quiet effort that had led to this point. Together, they continued to experiment, create, and share ideas, building a collaborative space that nurtured creativity and learning. The small circle that had once been a sanctuary for overlooked talents became a hub of exploration and inspiration, a place where ideas could grow freely and students could celebrate their abilities without fear of judgment. The recognition also sparked a deeper reflection within her. She understood that being underestimated was not a flaw in herself, but a limitation in others' perceptions. It had been a challenge, yes, but it had also prepared her to persevere, to develop resilience, and to find motivation within herself. The experience had taught her patience, humility, and the importance of trusting her instincts. She realized that talent alone was not enough. It required effort, courage, and the willingness to step forward when the opportunity presented itself. She began to mentor younger students, quietly encouraging those who were overlooked or underestimated. She shared her experiences and advised them on pursuing their interests and believing in their abilities. She offered guidance on projects, experiments, and creative work, teaching them that recognition may not always come immediately, but persistence and dedication would eventually reveal their strengths. Her guidance was gentle but impactful, helping others navigate the same challenges she had faced at T-School. She continued to build her skills, taking on projects that challenged her in new ways. She experimented with new ideas, combining creativity with careful analysis and problem-solving. Each success, small or large, reinforced her confidence and validated the quiet, persistent effort she had put into her work. Teachers who had once underestimated her now looked to her as an example of how hidden talent could shine with the right encouragement and opportunities. Her story began to inspire others, quietly spreading among the students. They saw that brilliance was not always loud, that quiet diligence could produce remarkable results, and that perseverance in the face of underestimation could lead to success. She became a symbol of resilience and ingenuity, demonstrating that true talent often grows unseen until the moment it is revealed. It was a legacy that went beyond her personal achievements, impacting the culture of her school in subtle but meaningful ways. One afternoon, during a quiet moment in the library, she reflected on her journey. She remembered the years of feeling invisible, of being overlooked, and the small victories she had celebrated in private. She realized how far she had come, not just in terms of recognition, but in her personal growth. She had learned to trust herself, to embrace challenges, and to persist despite doubts and setbacks. The journey had shaped her character, teaching her that true success was as much about resilience and dedication as it was about talent. Her parents continued to be her greatest supporters, celebrating not just the external accomplishments, but the person she had become. They marveled at her courage, creativity, and determination. They reminded her that recognition from others was a reflection of her consistent effort, but the most important validation was the belief she had developed in herself. It was a lesson she carried forward, knowing that self-belief would guide her through all future endeavors. She also learned to appreciate the small moments of recognition, the subtle acknowledgments from teachers, the curious questions from classmates, and the quiet encouragement from friends. Each one was a reminder that her talent mattered, that her efforts had value, and that she had the ability to inspire and lead by example. She understood that greatness was not always immediate or obvious, but it could be nurtured, revealed, and celebrated over time. As the school year progressed, she continued to balance academic responsibilities, creative projects, and personal growth. She approached challenges with confidence, knowing that her abilities were real and that her dedication could produce meaningful results. She became more confident in expressing her ideas, participating in discussions, and contributing to collaborative projects. The fear of being underestimated no longer held her back. It had transformed into motivation to continue exploring her potential. Her story became a quiet legend within the school, a tale of perseverance, hidden talent, and the power of self-belief. Students and teachers alike recognized that brilliance could exist in unexpected places, and that careful observation and encouragement could uncover remarkable abilities. Her experience inspired a culture of support and recognition, encouraging others to look beyond first impressions and celebrate talent in all its forms. By the end of the year, she had established herself as a student of remarkable creativity and intelligence, respected and admired by both peers and teachers. She continued to work on her projects, explore new ideas, and mentor others, carrying forward the lessons she had learned. The moment she had stepped into the spotlight with her performance had changed everything, not just for her, but for the environment around her. It had shown that persistence, patience, and self-belief could overcome years of underestimation. She knew that the journey was far from over, that life would continue to present challenges and opportunities. But she also knew that she had the strength, talent, and determination to face them. The hidden genius that had once been overlooked was now acknowledged, celebrated, and ready to grow further. She understood that recognition was meaningful, but her true power lay in her abilities, her dedication, and her confidence in herself. In the quiet moments, she reflected on the journey, feeling gratitude for the challenges, the support, and the victories, both large and small. She understood that being underestimated had shaped her in ways that recognition alone could not. It had taught her resilience, humility, patience, and the importance of trusting her instincts. These lessons would guide her in every future endeavor, ensuring that her hidden genius would continue to shine, not only for herself but for those she inspired along the way. Her story became a source of hope and encouragement for others, a reminder that talent and perseverance often exist quietly until the right moment reveals them. She had transformed her experience of being underestimated into a journey of self-discovery, growth, and inspiration. And as she continued to move forward, she carried with her the knowledge that her abilities were real, valuable, and capable of making a lasting impact on the world around her.